If you clicked on this video, you probably think about quitting your job, even though your team is nice, you get on with your boss, you're happy with your role, but something isn't quite right, but you can't really pinpoint what it is and if it's actually enough to leave your job. I was recently in a similar position and I did decide to leave my job, so hopefully this video can help you figure out if you should stay or if you should go. With these types of videos, it's always really important to have some context, especially if you're comparing this to your situation. So let's just have a little breakdown. Also, by the way, every time I do these sit-down videos, people always comment that my accent is really weird. And to that I say, I'm a German potato, I'm from Germany, I have a German accent, and if that's bothering you, this might not be the video for you. We can't all be native speakers, so anyways. So just a bit about my professional background. I've been working in marketing in London for the last like 4 or 5 years now. My first 2 roles were sort of temporary 1-year contracts, so I never really had to quit, but my last role was a permanent role and I was in that position for 2.5 years, and I was umming and ahhing for ages if I should leave or if I should stay, and it's really tough to pinpoint the right moment to leave a company, especially if there's not an obvious reason to go, like a unhealthy work environment. Then you should obviously quit, but I didn't have any of that. I got on really well with my co-workers, I had a really nice manager, I got on with my boss, I was quite happy with the role and the industry. I felt like I was learning quite a lot, and I did obviously stay in that job for 2.5 years, which I feel like is quite a decent amount, especially if you're quite early on in your career. But yeah, long story short, there were just a few things that I wasn't quite happy about, and I did make the choice to leave in the end. I know it's obviously really different in industries and countries, but I feel like some things are also quite universal, so let's get into it. First reason why I started looking for different roles is because I had a lack of team connection, and that wasn't anything to do with my team. It was a very lovely team and everyone was really good at what they did, but I was in a fully remote role. My team was actually based in South Africa mostly, and it was pretty much just me in the UK. I did have a co-working space that I could go to every now and then, but none of my colleagues were there, so it was just me alone in the co-working space. It did help to get out of the house every now and then, but I didn't really have a lot of social contact. During my work days, I definitely kind of started behaving like a hermit. I also feel like it gave me a little bit of social anxiety because I was in a position where I didn't really have to leave the house. I didn't have a lot of like in-person contact. I don't know, I feel like it kind of led me to being more awkward or like more socially anxious even in my private life. I'm not sure if that's a thing. That's just how I felt. I'm also quite like an anxious person, so I feel like that was just kind of triggering for me. But yeah, that was one of the first reasons why I started feeling a little bit unhappy in my job. Honestly, can't believe I'm saying this because before this, I only applied for remote jobs. You know, I was really keen to get a remote role, but yeah, I feel like it's also important to recognize if something that you always thought you wanted is no longer working for you. What we want and what we need changes, so you know, the job you applied for and you loved maybe 2 or 3 years ago, if it's not serving you now, you know, it's okay to move on, even if you once really hoped to get a job like that. And we do evolve, and that's fine. So I would just really think about if your current work setup still works for you. Second reason, I feel like this is a really obvious one, but pay and benefits. Guys, I know it's sometimes awkward to talk about money, but I'm not gonna sit here and say I'm going to work because I love my job. I'm going to work to pay my bills. That is the main reason why I'm going. It's not a charity. So I think this is a really valid point. I was just kind of feeling underpaid for the amount of responsibility I had. So I think you always have to weigh obviously pay and responsibility, and if that's out of balance, then you probably reach a point of unhappiness. I feel like that's probably quite universal experience. In my situation, I obviously went to my manager, went to my boss, I had really good performance reviews, and I was just saying, you know, you're happy with my performance, so can we talk about a salary increase, a promotion? I think I would have been happy with either of those things. I would have preferred both, obviously, especially after 2.5 years, but I was just kind of blocked from, you know, leadership, I suppose, and that really frustrated me, especially if you have a really positive performance review. I think it's really important to establish some sort of timeline. If your employer doesn't meet that timeline, I also think you should kind of follow up on that, and that was kind of the case for me. I did say last year I want to get a promotion in 6 months, and this is what I'm going to do in those 6 months to achieve that, and you know, my boss was happy with that, and at the end of the day I achieved all of those things and I still didn't get a promotion. I also didn't get a pay rise, so that was really the point for me where I started applying for different roles, because I felt undervalued, I suppose, and also, you know, I really wanted to progress in my career and not like kind of stagnate on the same salary and the same position for too long. So that was a very important reason why I left, and I think you have to be kind of careful with that, because it does take a while to get a promotion, it does take a while to get a salary increase. I would kind of look around, just kind of see, you know, if something happened in your team. It did have something to do with the health of the company I was working for. That was the reason why, you know, no promotions or salary increases were happening. So I would just kind of check for like the overall health of the company you're working for, check if your coworkers get promotions or not, you know, then kind of go from there. I think it's something you want to take like really carefully. A good rule of thumb would be, if you haven't progressed, let's say for 2 years in terms of salary or promotion, then it's probably time to set some sort of timeline. And if then nothing happens, even though you kind of met your goals and you have positive performance reviews, I would say, in my opinion, it may be time to move on. Obviously up to you, that's just what I did, and that was the timeline for me that I felt comfortable with in sort of stagnating. It also depends how important that is to you. In terms of career progression, I think salary is obviously a different thing, but you know, they do often go hand in hand. So yeah, this is kind of like a personal one, but that was my timeline, so hopefully that helps you kind of figure out where you're at. But yeah, that's number 2. So after 2.5 years at that company in the same position, because I obviously didn't get a promotion, I kind of felt like I learned everything that I could just in that role and in that environment. It was a very small team as well, and I did learn a lot. I'm really like grateful for that experience. But yeah, I just kind of felt like I reached a point where I wasn't really learning a lot more, and I started to feel a bit bored, and you know, boredom is obviously such a killer for your motivation and just your overall happiness. I feel like in your role, I feel like that's also something to watch out for if you feel really bored at work. And I'm not sort of talking your like everyday boredom where you just, you know, have a couple of hours at work where you feel bored, or you're doing like admin work and you're like, oh my god, this is so boring, I want to quit my job. I think questions you should ask yourself is more like, can I learn more from my team? Can I learn more from leadership? If not, you know, is my company open to paying for a course or sending me to events? Is there something I can do to sort of learn more and progress in that role? And if all of the answers are no, that may be another indication that it's time to move on, depending on how important that is to you. But I feel like that's really important to me, that I feel like I can learn something from like someone, or like my job or my position, the industry, whatever it may be. And yeah, if you're bored with everything, then it may be time for a career change, or just, you know, work in a new industry, try a job that's maybe a little bit different from what you did before, and just learn something new, because I feel like that's really important in your professional career. And lastly, a very kind of specific point to the industry I'm working in, but I worked for a consultancy / agency, which is obviously very fast paced, quite high pressure. If you work in that sort of environment, you know what I'm talking about. And I really wanted to move in-house, which is also a decision I kind of made and realized while I did the job. So it took me quite a while to kind of figure out that I think an in-house position for that point in my life where I'm at right now, I think is better for me. Working for consultancy and agency is really good because you learn quite a lot. I don't know, I really wanted to work in-house and kind of experience that as well. While you're sort of relatively early in your career, I think it's important to try a few different things and just kind of figure out what works best for you. So I think for now I'm happier with my in-house role. So that was another reason why I decided to leave my job. Especially if you're in a job where as I said, nothing obvious is wrong, then I think it's really hard to make that decision to leave, because, you know, change is obviously uncomfortable. You don't really know what's on the other side. And for me, I was just kind of constantly thinking, what if I make it worse? You know, maybe the grass isn't greener on the other side. You can't really tell in job interviews. Like, you can only really tell if you've been somewhere for like a couple of weeks. Like, even at the beginning, it takes a bit of time to kind of figure out what the company culture is like, if you get on with your team, if you get on with your boss, what the job is really like. It is a big risk to take. And I'm also fully aware that the job market right now is pretty like volatile. It took me probably like 6 months of applying and interviews to find something that I was happy with. But one thing I would say about that if you have a job and you're thinking about leaving, then you're in the best position to apply for a new role, because you're not applying out of panic, you're not applying out of, you know, I don't have a job and I need the money. You are making like a very conscious decision, and you can stay in that job until you find something that really works for you, which I feel like is obviously the best position to be in when you interview. I know it's obviously important to pay your bills and, you know, make sure everything's covered, especially if you maybe have people relying on you financially, but I feel like it's also important to take risks. If you're kind of early on in your career, like in the first 5 years, then I would say it's totally fine to switch jobs if you've been there for like 1 or 2 years. Obviously, talk to your friends, talk to your family, see what they say. I think ultimately you shouldn't stay stuck in a role that you know is not right for you or you're bored with just because you're scared of change. Change shouldn't hold you back. It's okay to be scared. I feel like it's healthy to be scared a little bit, but it shouldn't hold you back in the end. I think some questions to ask yourself are, am I being paid fairly? You know, does my salary match my responsibilities? Do I want to progress? Can I progress in that role and that company I'm in? Are you growing? Do you feel connected to your team and your company? Do you align with the values? And you know, if you answered some of these questions with no, then I would say it's time to look around. I'm obviously not a career advisor, and this is just my personal experience. You know, if you have a lot of doubts, especially around the topics I touched on, then it may be time to leave. I also personally think if you clicked on a video like this, then you probably know what's right, and sometimes you just need, I guess, the permission or someone to say it's okay to leave. Like, it's okay, it will be fine, you're gonna be fine. Just obviously don't make any like rash decisions. Apply until you find something good. Only quit your job if you have something new, unless you wanna, you know, take a break or go freelance. Then that obviously doesn't apply to you, but I think otherwise, you know, just see what's out there. Start applying, start interviewing, see what the job market is like, get a feel for salaries, get a feel for what kind of position and responsibilities you could get, and just go from there. Don't let fear hold you back. You can do hard things, and there could be something better waiting on the other side. So it's worth taking the jump sometimes. I hope this was helpful. I know this is obviously quite a tricky topic. Let me know what you think, what kind of led you to change your job. Maybe we can have a little exchange in the comments as well. When I sort of announced that I have a new job, I feel like a lot of people were commenting that they were in a similar boat, not really sure if it's time to move on or not, and I feel you. I hope this video helps you. If you have any questions, then please let me know. Just feel free to comment, and maybe we can figure it out together. Thanks for watching this video. I hope this was helpful to you, and I'll see you in my vlogs if you watch those. Tschüss!